Let's do that hockey.
All right, welcome to episode 81 of the DobberProspects radio podcast. I'm your host, Peter Harling, and on episode 81, this episode is going to be entirely dedicated to this year's edition of the mock draft. To help me out with this episode, I have recruited the services of some of DobberProspects' finest writers, starting with our director or head of European scouting, Jokke Nevalainen, regular on the podcast. You would recommend him from such shows as the World Junior Preview. Welcome back, Jokke.
Hey, Pete. How's it going?
It's going pretty good, man. And also joining us is first-timer to the show, Josh Tessler. He's our Buffalo Sabres prospect writer. Welcome to the show, Josh. First time, long time?
Yep, and hey there, Pete.
Hey. All right. And coming back for his encore is our Ottawa Senators writer, Tony Ferrari. Tony, what's happening, bud?
How's it going, Pete?
It's going good, man. It's going good. You guys all set to do a mock draft?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
right
can't
on.
wait.
Everyone loves a mock draft. It's been the podcast's most downloaded of all the shows. Was the one I did last year with Ainsley and Cam. So looking forward to an exciting episode. So for everyone listening, the way this is going to work is I went to good old Tankathon, hit the simulate button, and it gave me a draft order based on the standings as of today. So the draft order is going to go as follows. The big winner of the lottery was the Los Angeles Kings. And then it goes Ottawa Senators, New York Rangers, Detroit Red Wings, New Jersey Devils, Anaheim, Ottawa, Montreal, Minnesota, and Buffalo as the top 10. I don't think there's much difference from the lottery after that. The rest is basically based on standings and I guess a presumption of who wins the Stanley Cup. So, and then what we've done is we've assigned draft picks to each one of the writers. So we will take turns, kind of like one of your fantasy mock drafts, where we just kind of snake through the draft order, taking turns, picking as if we were the NHL general manager of that team. So this is not fantasy ranking mock draft. This is just a straight up mock draft. So if your pick is Buffalo Sabres and you're on the clock, you basically take the player you think is either the best player available or the best prospect suited for that team's needs, depending on whatever you predict the Buffalo Sabres would do with that pick, for example. All right. So with the disclaimer out of the way, why don't we just jump pitter-patter and get right at it, or jump right into it? What do you say, boys?
Sounds good.
All right. So the first overall pick, as I mentioned, belongs to the Los Angeles Kings, who moved up one place in the draft, and they shock nobody, and they go ahead and take Alexis Lafreniere, the consensus number one ranked player. He's the best player in the draft, I think, even though some people might argue that the center is the way to go there. I think based on his performance all season long and everything he's done up until now, he hasn't had any hiccups. There's no reason not to take him. I was really impressed with his physical play at the World Juniors and at the top prospect game in my live viewing of him this year. I don't think anybody is going to raise an eyebrow at that. It's kind of a slam dunk no-brainer. So moving on, we're going to go with the number 2 pick, and that is the Ottawa Senators. They have 2 picks in this draft, but this one is their own, and they move up 3 spots from where they are in the standings today. And so they have the second overall pick, and picking for them will be our Ottawa Senators writer, Tony Ferrari. It's up to you, Tony.
All right. Well, this one's a pretty easy pick, to be completely honest, and I'm just going to go Quentin Byfield. He's the center. He's the second best player in the draft to me pretty clearly, and the Senators have their franchise player from here on forward.
Nice. All right, so the third pick, I'll be making that again. And this one is owned by the New York Rangers, who are the big-time winner in the draft lottery. I think they picked second overall last year to take Kaapo Kakko, which was the highest they ever picked in an entry draft, which kind of blows my mind. a little bit, eh? An original six team has never had the first overall pick. How is that possible? I don't know, but that's the way it is. So they get another really nice high draft pick, which will really insulate their rebuild. And there's a lot of different ways the Rangers could go here. And there's a lot of amazing players on the board. But I have to think that they're going to go with a player that is an offensive dynamic player that can really generate some buzz, kind of like what they have with Artemi Panarin. So they're going to go with the German Tim Stützle, or Stützle, however you pronounce his name, at the 3rd overall pick.
That's an interesting one. That's a bold choice.
Yeah, well, they're the Rangers.
That's true.
All right, so 4th up on the board, we're going to Detroit, and this will be Josh's first pick. Josh, take it away for the Red Wings.
Yeah, sure. So, So for the first pick for the Red Wings will take Lucas Raymond. While he has not been having a ton of playing time due to the SHL's preference to play their veteran players and higher roles. He has definitely shown that he is an excellent playmaker and deserves a nod at 4.
Awesome. Not much surprise there. I don't think that's a pretty good, solid pick. I think Detroit would be happy to have him there. Coming up at number 5, New Jersey Devils fell down 2. Serves them right. They've been stealing draft lottery results for the last few years here. So good for them for dropping down. And picking for New Jersey here is going to be Jokke. Jokke, welcome to the draft.
Yeah, thanks. You guys stole all the best guys in the top 4, but yeah, let's go with Alexander Holtz, 5th overall. So this is a guy who is a tremendous goal scorer. Could really challenge Patrick Laine and all those guys for the top goal scorer trophy in the upcoming years. So put a guy like that next to Jack Hughes, and you'll get some magic out of that pair. So I think that's going to be a good choice for them.
All right, so Alexander Holtz goes at the 5 spot. So our top 5 picks off the board so far, for those keeping score: Lafreniere 1st to the Los Angeles Kings, Byfield 2nd to the Ottawa Senators. No surprises there. Tim Stützle goes 3rd overall to the New York Rangers. That may or may not happen. Lucas Raymond goes 4th overall to the Detroit Red Wings. They're super excited to get him there. And Alexander Holtz goes 5th to New Jersey. Okay, so another team dropping down 2 points in the lottery would be the Anaheim Ducks. And we're going to go back to Jokke for this one. Who you got going to Anaheim at 6, Jokke?
Yeah, so this is a bit tougher here, but I'm going to go with Jamie Drysdale. So the Ducks get a franchise defenseman. They already have a couple of really good defensemen, but I think Drysdale is going to be the best of them all, and he's going to run their top power play and play big minutes on their top pair eventually. So I think that's a good fit for the rebuilding Ducks.
Yeah, there's a premium on defensemen in drafts, and I think teams will be very interested in drafting Drysdale very high, as he is the consensus number 1D in the draft. So him going outside of the top 5 is maybe a little surprising. I think he's comparable to some of the higher end draft picks that have gone in drafts past few years, and we've had some draft picks go as high as 1st overall. So I wouldn't be surprised if come draft day in Montreal, he does squeeze his way into the top 5, but it's going to be really hard for him to supplant any of the guys that we picked in the top 5. So this might be exactly where he ends up going. And I think Anaheim would be super happy with that. All right, so going on to number 7, the Ottawa Senators are picking again. Thank you very much to the San Jose Sharks. Pick that they've acquired that's not lottery protected. It does drop down 1 in this simulation. And we're going back to Tony again for his second Ottawa Senators pick. They've already added Byfield at number 2. Tony, who do they get at 7?
Well, this one's going to be a little bit different than what most people are going to expect, but because they have the second second pick in the first round, and because Drysdale's gone and the big four gone at the top of the draft, I think they can go Askarov here. Really, really improve that goalie pipeline because they have a lot of guys that are kind of just guys. Like Philip Gustafsson still got a lot of potential, but he's not Askarov. Askarov can change the future in the net for the Senators for the next 10 to 15 years.
That is an interesting pick, and I'm sure the Senators are going to pick late in the top 10 in this draft, unless something crazy happens with the lottery and they have 2 in the top 5, and they can't take Askarov in top 5, I don't think. But
exactly.
This will be so interesting for them because I just did it Ottawa Senators top 10 prospect rankings, and they're pretty good in goal. Joey Decord looks good. Marcus Hogberger has looked good in his call-up this season. They got Gustafsson, like you said, so it's not like they're devoid of prospects, but they don't have any A-plus prospects. And if you look at their depth chart, if you add Byfield at center, their prospect depth is fantastic. They've got Brandstrom, Brown, Norris, a lot of really, really great prospects. I think they would, if they had their druthers, they would rather take Drysdale over Askarov, but since he just went, like you said, this kind of gives them a blue chip at every position, doesn't it?
And that's kind of my thinking. Like with the depth that they have at the other positions, it mitigates the risk of taking a goaltender this high. And yeah, if their second pick is in the top, like at the back end of the top 10, and the big guys are gone, including Drysdale, then I think they could take the swing on the goalie, but there's still a lot of talent up front for them to take if they decide to go away from the goalie.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting pick if they pick there. All right, so Askarov off the board, first goalie, goes inside the top 10. He had the shaky, happy feet World Junior, but I don't put any strike against him on his record for that. I think this is a totally valid pick. Okay, so moving on. Montreal Canadiens hosting the draft. Crowd goes wild. I'm not going to announce this pick in French, although I'm sure it will be at the draft. So 8th overall pick for the Montreal Canadiens. They're going to go with a forward here, and they would like to take a French-Canadian player, of course, but you can't really do that if it's not the logical choice, and in this situation, it's not. So they're going to draft from the OHL, and I have a coin toss for me between Perfetti and Rossi because I absolutely love both these players, and I actually happened to see them play live head-to-head on Sunday in Ottawa this past weekend, and it seemed pretty clear to me who the better player was out of the two, although I love them both very much. And the Montreal Canadiens absolutely need to hit a home run here. They've kind of struck out with some first-round picks in the last 10 years, which I think has a lot to do with why they're picking high again. So they're going to go with Cole Perfetti at center, and hopefully he ends up being a number 1 center for them because I don't think they have a player in their organization that can take over that position either currently or in the immediate future. So Cole Perfetti goes off the board at 8. Picking number 9 will be the Minnesota Wild, and picking for Minnesota is Jokke. Jokke, you're up.
Yeah, this is a tough one. 2 great options still left, but I'm gonna go with the Finnish two-way center Anton Lundell. Minnesota really loves those Finns, so I think he's gonna be a great fit there. He can learn a lot from Mikko Koivu. I think Lundell is gonna play in the NHL next season, so he still has time to learn from Koivu there and become a master two-way center and hopefully a Selke trophy contender like I think he will be. So Wild go with Lundell there.
That is a nice safe pick just inside the top 10. And you think he's going to play in the NHL next year, huh?
Yeah, I do.
All right. So if you're in a fantasy draft, that's something that you want to take note of, that he could be a player fast-tracked to contribute to your roster as soon as next year. And a fantasy draft, I think that moves him up a little bit in the rankings. All right. So rounding out our top 10, we're going to go back to Josh, who is picking for his own team that he writes for. That would be the Buffalo Sabres. So Josh, you should have a really good handle on what their pipeline needs, what they got, and you follow the draft prospects really well. You know who's available. who's in at their top 10 pick?
So with the 10th overall selection, the Sabres will go with Marco Rossi. So I mean, I know that given the center depth that they have, given Dylan Cousins and Casey Middlestat, it does seem kind of odd to grab another centerman. But, I mean, the way that Rossi controls the pace of the game in the offensive zone, he is just truly a dynamic forward, and he just seems like a natural fit for the Buffalo Sabres.
Solid pick there. You definitely want to just, I think, take the best player available in your top 10 all the time, despite whatever your organizational depth is. If you've got a plethora of defensemen and the best player available in the top 10 pick where you're up is clearly a defenseman, you pick them. And you just do asset management control going forward. Having defensemen or centers as trade chips that are prospects is a very good problem to have. All right, so that's the top 10. A little quick recap again. Starting from 1 and working our way down. Lafreniere, of course, to LA. Byfield to Ottawa. Stützle to the Rangers. Jokke, is it Stützle or Stützle?
Stützle.
Stützle. Okay, the guys on TSN were calling him Stützle on the broadcast during the World Juniors. So I know, Stützle. Good. 4th, Detroit Red Wings pick Lucas Raymond. 5th, New Jersey Devils take Alexander Holtz. At 6, Anaheim takes the first defenseman Jamie Drysdale. And the Ottawa Senators, with their 2nd pick inside the top 10, take Yaroslav Askarov, the fantastic Russian goalie. Hometown Montreal Canadiens at 8 pick Cole Perfetti. At number 9, Minnesota Wild go Anton Lundell. And rounding out the top 10, we just had Marco Rossi from the Ottawa 67s going cross-border to the Buffalo Sabres. So the next pick, 11th overall, belongs to Chicago Blackhawks. Picking for them will be Tony. Take it away, Tony.
Sorry. The Chicago Blackhawks have a very loaded back end in terms of prospects. So I think they have to go up front here. And I think they're willing to take a risk on a guy like Noah Gunler. He's got a ton of skill. He's got a ton of offensive flair. He's a fun player to watch. He, despite being a little bit smaller, he works off the boards fairly well. And he's a guy that if things break right for him, he could end up being one of the top 6, 7, 8 guys in this draft. So I think Chicago goes with the upside, takes him, and works on the flaws in this game and possibly his attitude.
Sounds good. Nice goal scoring option there for them, as Patrick Kane is actually starting to get a little long in the tooth, isn't he? All right, so going back to back picks here with Tony Ferrari. Tony, you're picking 12th overall for the Winnipeg Jets. Who do you like the Jets taking at 12?
Well, I think the Jets are in a weird spot with where they are in terms of wanting to compete and try to rebuild at the same time. So I think they have a plethora of options. Their defensive pipeline isn't the greatest, but there really isn't a defenseman that's worth taking here over any of the forwards. So I think they go a little safe and they go with Dylan Holloway.
All right, so the Jets take their big double NCA forward. That is a nice, safe, solid pick. He almost made Team Canada for the World Juniors, which was impressive because not only is it a difficult team to crack because they have so many players to choose from, but they also tend to prefer players playing in the CHL as opposed to the NCAA, and that he got so close bodes really, really well for how good of a player he is. All right, so like you were saying about defense, next up would be the Nashville Predators. I'll be picking for Nashville here again. And as we all know, Nashville loves to pick defense. And they are super fantastic at developing them. But because they have so many good defense in the system and they've already developed and that are coming, and like you just said, you got to take the best player available. And that just isn't a defenseman for a few more picks. So maybe they can look in the second round for a defenseman. But right now, they got to go forward. And I have it narrowed down to 2 players on my list between an Ottawa 67 and a player coming out of Germany. So I think in this situation, Nashville's going to go with Jack Quinn from the Ottawa 67s. He's having such a fantastic year. Ottawa 67s are a really good team. And I think I talked about this on my last episode of the podcast, that he's playing on a second role, kind of on an insulated line. He's still putting up a lot of points, despite the depth that Ottawa has. And I think next year, after some of their players graduate, their overage players will move on. I think the 67s will take a bit of a step back next year. But Jack Quinn will take a big step forward. He'll be thrust into the limelight and be their number one player. I kind of see a lot of parallels to him and Connor McMichael from last year, and how McMichael's having a breakout season this year in the OHL with the London Knights being the man on London. So I think that's what Nashville will be thinking as well. They go ahead and take Quinn at 13. So the next pick, 14th overall, is property of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they had to trade this pick to Carolina to purge themselves of the Patrick Marleau contract. So this is going to sting a little bit for Toronto, because when they made this trade at the draft last year, they were expecting this to be the 31st overall pick, as it would win them a Stanley Cup, freeing up all that cap space. Doesn't look like it's working out that way yet, but let's see what Carolina can do with the pick. And we're going to go back to Josh for this one. So 14th overall, Carolina. Josh, you're up.
Yep. So the newest member of the Jerks is Connor Zary. So Connor Zary has been having a absolutely incredible season in the WHL. And it never hurts to add another center to your prospect depth. So the 14th pick is Connor Zary.
Sounds good. Carolina's done a really, really good job of drafting in the last couple of years. I like what they're doing with their organization, and they've got so much depth that they really have the freedom to kind of roll the dice a little bit on this draft and take some shots, but I think that is a really nice safe pick. 15th overall belongs to the Philadelphia Flyers, and we'll go to our Director of European Scouting, Jokke, for this pick. Jokke, Flyers are up.
All right. So with the 15th overall pick, the Flyers take Jan Mysak, the Czech forward who jumped to the OHL after the World Juniors, and maybe hopefully he can show more of that offensive upside he has in the junior league. But he may not have a high-end offensive upside, but he can play all three forward positions, and up and down the lineup. Can be used on power play, on penalty kill. He can do it all. So I think he's a great option at 15th overall.
Solid pick. I've seen him a couple times. Saw him live in Kingston last weekend, I think it was. And it was his second game. So still getting his feet wet in the league and his bearings, the whole across the pond, culture, language, smaller ice, all that stuff. He didn't have a point in his first game, but I saw him score his first OHL goal. It was a beauty point shot, and then I saw highlights of some of the other points he's picked up since then, and I think you're bang on with your assessment of him. He can play up and down the lineup in a bunch of different situations. They were using him offensively and defensively on the penalty kill. He moves really well. He's not super big, but he's not small. So yeah, a lot to like with that pick there. Next up is 16th overall, belonging to Vegas Golden Knights. And I don't think they've picked this early since their first draft. So this will be nice for them to replenish some of their prospects, because they've traded away a few of them in order to load up with some star power up on the NHL roster, and that's working out fairly well for them. So the Vegas Golden Knights are up at 16th overall, and we're going to Josh here. Josh, you're on the clock.
So given the concerns for Vegas at wing in terms of their farm system depth, the Golden Knights will take Dawson Mercer. So Mercer is an outstanding finisher. He is exceptional in the offensive zone. His defensive work, needs to improve a little bit, but I mean, in terms of the offensive upside that Mercer has, he could be an incredible asset to the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, he's looked pretty good for Canada at the World Juniors. Lots to like with that pick. All right, moving on. New Jersey Devils are on the clock. They are picking with the Arizona draft pick. And we're going back to Tony for this one. Tony, you're up at 17 for New Jersey.
All right. Well, at 17, the New Jersey Devils finally take the second defenseman off the board, and they go with Lucas Cormier. He's a smooth skating, skilled offensive defenseman, but he doesn't come with the same sort of risk that a guy like Jeremy Poirier comes with. But the upside offensively is just as high. Cormier's dealt with some injuries, but every time he's come back, he's looked just as good, if not better. And he's the kind of player that they want to add to their system, because outside of Ty Smith and a couple other decent young players, they don't really have any stud defensemen coming up. So Lucas Cormier is the pick there.
Wow, that's a little bit off my board. That's the first one. So far, I only have one player in the top 18 on my pick list that hasn't been selected yet, and I've already mentioned his name. And this is the first player that's picked that's not inside my top 31. So that's an interesting pick. I'm not sure how off the board it is, but this is just going off of my list. So that's a good one. All right, next up, we've got Calgary Flames picking at 18th overall with their own pick. And I really like what the Flames have in their prospect depth chart. I think they've got a lot of good stuff, particularly up front. But I still think that there's a forward or two here that they just can't pass up with this position. And they're going to go with the German JJ Peterka. He had a really nice showing at the World Juniors. I liked what I saw from him there. And I think he's got a pretty significant NHL upside. So Calgary's going to go with the German at 18th. And their provincial rivalries, the Edmonton Oilers, are on the clock next. And we're going to go back to Josh for this pick. Josh, you're up with Edmonton.
Yeah. So in terms of the Edmonton Oilers, I don't think that the Edmonton Oilers can shy away from a solid two-way forward. And given that they will take Rodion Amirov, who had a fabulous showing at the CHL Russia series. He is a very, very, very good two-way forward. Always looking for the puck, tracks the puck well, and is a solid barrier, especially in the neutral zone too. I definitely do think that he would be an excellent fit with the Edmonton Oilers.
All right, I'm starting to feel sorry for whoever Edmonton picks in the first round, because they don't have a great track record outside of slam dunks like McDavid. So hopefully whoever they pick pans out. All right, so rounding out the next group of 10 at 20, it will be the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are having a tremendous season despite all of the challenges and obstacles that they've had this year. And representing them will be Jokke. So Jokke, you're on the clock at 20 here.
Yeah, things are getting a lot more difficult here at this point. A few good options to choose from, but I guess I might be going off the board a little bit, but I'll go with Emil Andrae, a Swedish defenseman. The Blue Jackets are not afraid to take Swedes in the draft. They love those Swedes. And even though they have Jones and Werenski on the blue line, I think they could add another high-end guy who can run the top power play eventually and play top 4 minutes. And he's just he might be small, but he's just super smart, and he plays the game the right way. And I'm a big fan of him.
All right, so Emil Andrae is the Columbus Blue Jackets pick. He's a defenseman going 20th overall. I don't think I'm going to do a recap again. I'll do that at the end after the next 11 picks. So coming up, we got the second pick in the first round. This will go to the Carolina Hurricanes. So they picked 14th. They took Connor Zary with the pick they acquired from the Toronto Maple Leafs. And now they've got their own pick. So let's see. They've already added a center. So they're going to go with the D. And they are going to go with the guy I think is the next highest ranked player on the board, and that would be American Jake Sanderson. So U.S. defenseman Sanderson is going at 21 to Carolina. And that moves us along to 22. We got the Dallas Stars on the clock. Tony, you ready for your next pick?
All right. The Dallas Stars, they have a decent prospect pool. They're lacking a little bit with right-handed defensemen, but the biggest right-hand defenseman here is probably, or the best right-hand defenseman, is probably Topi Niemela. But I think they just go best player available here, and they take a guy like Zion Nyback. He's a smaller Swedish forward. He's got tons of skill. He likes to work into the middle of the ice. I think that's just the best pick for them because their prospect pool is fairly even across the board, so go with best player available, and you can't go wrong.
That sounds good to me. I had got Zion Nyback penciled in at 22 to Dallas. All right, so now we're going Sunshine State. Florida Panthers are up at 23, and I believe... let's see. If I were Florida, who would I pick here? You're right, Jokke. This is starting to get a little bit more interesting. I think they're going to go with the center here, and they're going to go with Maverick Bourque. At the 23rd overall, he's a player I had ranked 19th. He's my next highest ranked player, so they go Maverick Bourque out of the queue here. And that takes us to 24, Colorado Avalanche, and we're going to Josh for this pick.
Yeah, so for the Avalanche are going to take Hendrix Lapierre. While there have been some concussion health issues that have popped up from an offensive upside perspective, as as a natural playmaker, in my mind, he is definitely the best player on the board at this point. And so the Avalanche add another talented centerman to their farm system.
Yeah, that's a solid pick. That's who I was kind of struggling with which one I would take. Bit of a coin toss for me. So yeah, that's a great pick. I really like that one at 24 to the Avalanche. All right, the 25th, we're going to Jokke, and you'll be picking for the New York Islanders here. So the Islanders are on the clock, and Jokke, you are up.
Yeah, so very quick search on the Islanders page. Doesn't really matter if you're checking the current roster or the prospects, but they just don't have any centers. So I think this is going to be an easy positional need. And the best center I have on my board is Vasily Ponomaryov, the Russian guy playing in the Q. Super strong two-way center. Very, very skilled and very smart. So I think he's going to be a great addition to play behind Barzal.
All right. So the New York Islanders go center at pick number 25. Pick number 26, we're going back to Sunshine State. Tampa Bay Lightning are on the board. And Jokke, your pick again.
Yeah. So next up, I think the Lightning is going to go with a defenseman here. So now I'm left with 2 options. So that's easier than 5 options, I guess. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the right-handed shot. So let's go with Justin Barron from the Q again. So a little bit of a run of player from the Q. So Justin Barron goes to the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Nice. I'm also expecting a number of D to go in the bottom 10 picks of this draft as well. So that's one of them. Justin Barron going to Tampa Bay at 26. All right. So, Tony, we're going back to you. 27th overall pick could go to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And you are on the clock for the Penguins here. They need all kinds of help, don't they?
Yeah, their prospect pool looks pretty bleak at the moment. So I think they go best player available, and they seem to like taking on guys that maybe have a little bit of a project to do with them. So I think they go with another defenseman here, left-handed defenseman Jeremy Poirier. He's got a ton of offensive upside, but just as exciting as he can be on one end, he's just as terrifying in the defensive end. He's the kind of boomer bust prospect, but the Pittsburgh Penguins are willing to take that risk, and they take Poirier off the board at 27.
All right. Another D going there. So 28th pick, we're going back to Tampa Bay for this one. They almost had back-to-back picks, and they just took a defenseman. This is a pick that belongs to the Vancouver Canucks, so I can't remember why Tampa Bay owns that pick, but they do. And they're going to go with a forward, and they don't seem to have a problem with guys who are a little bit smaller, and I think they really like the speed. So they're going to go with Jean-Luc Foudy here. Real speedy center out of the OHL. You recognize his name. His older brother's been drafted already. So they go with the second Foudy. He goes 20th overall to Tampa Bay. All right, only 3 picks left. Boston, St. Louis, and Washington. So first up would be Boston, and this will be your last pick in the mock. Josh, you're on the clock with the Bruins, bud.
So I'm going to try to make this pick with a Boston accent. Okay. So as I'm guzzling my Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee here, I'm going to take Tyson Foster. He definitely plays, a very physical game in the offensive zone. He tracks the puck well. He's always looking for the optimal poke check. He just seems like the natural Boston Bruin. So we're going to take Tyson Foster from the Barrie Colts.
That's as good as a bowl of clam chowder. All right, so 2 more picks. St. Louis Blues. Looks like they go back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals, but only get 1 win. Jokke, you got the last pick of your draft belongs to the St. Louis Blues. You're on the clock, pal.
All right. Still having too many good options left at this point, so I'm gonna go with another Czech guy. So Jaromír Pytlik from the Sioux jumped there during last season after playing in the Czech men's league. He's a big 2-way guy, can play up and down the lineup, can play all 3 forward positions, and I think the Blues are gonna like that type of a player who can be physical and be responsible defensively. May not have the highest offensive upside, but his all-around game is really strong. So Jaromír Pytlik goes to the Blues.
All right. I think he could be a first-round pick as well, so I'm glad to see him squeaking in into our mock draft. All right, so it's the last pick, 31st overall. The last draft with only 31 picks. I believe next year we'll have Seattle picking 32 first-round picks. And just a little sidebar pet peeve of mine. After having been to a number of drafts live and watching it on the draft floor, one thing that really, really irks me, and I think I might have said this on a previous episode as well, is as soon as the name, even before the name, the last player's name is announced, teams at the table, they're packing their stuff up and they're heading for the doors. Like they're trying to beat the traffic out of the rink or something. I don't know. But it really bothers me because it's a pretty special moment to be drafted in the first round of the NHL draft. And going up on stage in front of a full arena, shaking hands with the team and the management, putting on the hat and the jersey, getting your picture taken, kind of sullies that moment the player is having if it's in an emptying arena. Like, the lights are on, the roaches are all running for the exits is what it looks like. And it's pretty disrespectful to that player who has earned that privilege to go in the first round of the draft. So I hope that that's something that the NHL sends a memo out to its teams and says, hey, why don't you just sit tight until the player's off the stage? Then you can pack up and hit the bricks. So that being said, boys, stay in your chairs until this last pick is announced, because we'll do a little debrief as to what we saw, what we liked, what surprised us, what shockers, who made it in that we didn't think would, who didn't make it in that we thought would, who went higher, who went lower, all that kind of fun stuff. Analyze our own mock draft. So the last pick, Washington Capitals win the Stanley Cup apparently, and they get the last. They didn't even trade their first round pick to do it. Way to go, Washington. So this pick's going to Tony. You get the last pick, pal.
All right. Well, a player that I've kind of seen as like a Washington Capital type player all season long has been Will Cooley from the Windsor Spitfires. He's a physical presence. He plays a bit of that Tom Wilson style. He's not necessarily as dirty as Tom Wilson, but he's physical. You've seen in the Windsor-London game they broadcast on Sportsnet last week. He was hitting guys all over the ice. I happened to be at that game. He's got an impressive shot, and he's the kind of physical goal scorer that the Washington Capitals could insert in the lineup within a year or two, and I don't think he's got that much of a runway till he's in the NHL.
I absolutely love that pick. I was really thinking about taking him with my last pick in the draft because he's a player that I have a bit of a secret crush on. In the leagues that I'm in, it's a head-to-head roto leagues like the DobberProspects one. So having a player that can score goals for you, will take a high volume of shots, likes to hit a lot, will get you some hits. And I think he's even a center too. So no, he's not. He's a winger.
Yeah.
No face-off wins there. But still, a wide variety of stat-stuffing contributions to your fantasy roster with this player. And you either love him or you love to hate him. And if he's on your fantasy team, you're going to love him. Unless he plays for your NHL team's rivalry, and then you'll just have to hate him. But that's a pick that I really like. That's a good one. All right, boys, that rounds up the draft. I will do 1 through 31 quick summary and recap here, in case you forgot who went where. So Los Angeles Kings first overall, Lafreniere. Ottawa Senators took Byfield at 2. No surprise there. Rangers at 3 take Tim Stützle. Maybe a bit of a surprise there. We'll talk about that for sure. The Detroit Red Wings go with a nice safe Lucas Raymond pick at 4. New Jersey Devils don't win this lottery. They're turning into the Edmonton Oilers lately. They go with Alexander Holtz at 5th overall. Anaheim at 6 goes with the first D, Jamie Drysdale. Senators with their 2nd overall pick at 7th with the San Jose pick. They go with the goalie Askarov. Hometown Montreal Canadiens take Cole Perfetti at 8. They're super happy about that. Minnesota Wild at 9 take Anton Lundell, Mikko Koivu successor. Buffalo Sabres are maybe a little surprised to get Marco Rossi as late as 10th overall, but they take it. 11, Chicago Blackhawks. They go with Noel Gunler. Winnipeg Jets, picking 12th overall, go with NCAA Dylan Holloway. 13th overall, Nashville Predators. Wanted to go D, but they couldn't, so they go Jack Quinn. 14th overall, Carolina, with the pick that they stole from Toronto, go Connor Zary, center out of the dub. 15th overall, Philadelphia Flyers go Jan Mysak. Vegas Golden Knights pick 16th overall, take Dawson Mercer. The New Jersey Devils with the Arizona pick at 17 go with Cormier. At 18th overall, Calgary Flames take JJ Peterka. And then right after them, Edmonton Oilers at 19th go with Rodion Amirov. Columbus Blue Jackets at 20 take defenseman Andre. 21st overall, Carolina Hurricanes take, I can't read my own writing, Jake Sanderson. 23rd overall, Florida Panthers, Maverick Bourque. 24th, Colorado Avalanche go with Hendrix Lapierre. At 25th, the New York Islanders go with, what do you say he was, Ukrainian or Russian? Ponomarev? Russian. Beautiful. Ukrainians don't go in the first round. What was I thinking? 26, Tampa Bay go with Barron. Pittsburgh Penguins, desperate for some prospect depth, take Poirier at 27th. The Tampa Bay Lightning, using the Vancouver Canucks pick, go with Jean-Luc Foudy. 29th, Boston Bruins take Tyson Forster. At 30th, the St. Louis Blues go Jaromir Pitlick. No relation to the Pitlicks before, as they're American and he's Czech. 31st, Washington Capitals Congratulations on the Stanley Cup. Go with Cooley at 31. All right, boys. Let's talk about it. What did you guys think? I think the first two picks were no surprise there. Was anyone kind of surprised with Stützle going at 3?
I was a little surprised, but I'm not completely against it. I've been Stützle's biggest fan across the seas for about a year and a half now, and he's just one of those guys that I love watching play. So at number 3, I don't hate the pick because I don't think the gap between him and Raymond is astronomical, but I do think there is a gap there personally. But at number 3, I'm fine with taking Stützle.
So the reason why I did that was just what you said, that he's such a fun, exciting player to watch. And I think that will lean on the Rangers' decision-making. Now, I've seen him play a little bit more than I've seen Raymond. And I've just been more excited by watching Stützle than Raymond. Do you guys see what I'm talking about there, or am I out to lunch on that one? Is that just me?
Yeah, I think Raymond is at least as exciting to watch as Stützle, but yeah, I think that's probably affected by the roles that they play. Raymond plays both in the SHL and with the World Juniors team. Was playing a bottom 6 role, and Stützle has been playing a top 6 role, both in Dell and at the World Juniors. So I think that might affect how people view him. But yeah, I agree with Tony that the difference between the two isn't very big. So I would have had Raymond ahead of him as well, but I'm also fine with Stützle at 3.
All right, nice to know I'm not totally crazy there. The next couple picks, we had Raymond, Holtz, and Drysdale. I think those are all some names that we expected to be in the top 5. One of them had to not make it because there's 6 players there. I don't have any eyebrows raised at any of those positions. Do you guys?
No, not really. The one guy I'd love to get in that top 6, but I understand why he's not, is Anton Lundell. I just think his game's so complete, and he has the potential to be, like Jokke said, he could be a Selke winner in even 3-4 years into his career. So I think that's the one guy that I think could pop into that group maybe, but that group of 3 isn't anything to be upset about.
But do you want to pick a Selke winner in the top 10 of the draft, or do you want to pick a Hart Trophy winner in the top 10 of the draft?
If the Selke winner is going to score me 35 goals like I think Lundell can in the NHL, then I might take the Selke winner.
Interesting.
So, if he can be like a Patrice Bergeron, you definitely want to take him, within like the top 6.
Well, he fell all the way to 9, so that's a little low. He slipped below Perfetti. How do you guys feel about the Perfetti pick just before him?
The Perfetti pick, I'm not against it. Perfetti is a guy that I can see any team falling in love with from anywhere from like 5 to 11, 5 to 12, and whoever gets him is going to get a good guy that scores a lot, has the capabilities of scoring a lot of goals. But this year showed that he's diversified his skill set, and he's become such an advanced playmaker this year. And him and Suzuki, now that trade's gone through after the deadline, they've been just fun to watch together.
Yeah, he's impressed me every time I've seen him play. And seeing him play live for the first time, well, not the first time I saw him at the Top Prospect game, but live in Ottawa last weekend, where he was the star. He was the star of the show between Saginaw and Ottawa. And if you look at the rosters, there's a lot of names on there that you could say, well, he could be the star of the show. Well, he's really good. Well, he's got a lot of points. But it was Perfetti, and it wasn't even close. Like, he was the best player in that game. The overage players did some pretty neat things too, but they're 20, so there is that. Okay, Marco Rossi's a player that has been getting a lot of sexy time lately, and a lot of people are ranking him inside the top 10. He made it in our top 10, barely, at 10. Was anyone surprised to see him go this low or this high?
Me personally, I have him in the same kind of boat as Perfetti. He's one of those guys that I think any team could look at and say, okay, he's worth my 5th overall pick. But at the same time, another team could look at Askarov or Lundell or Drysdale and go, okay, I want to take them over him. So him and Perfetti are guys that I kind of expect to go in that 8 to 10 range or 8 to 11 range, because I think a lot of teams will be like, okay, I like this player, but I like this one better. And they might be the two guys that get jumped down.
Is that a tier then? 1 through 11?
That for me on my rankings, yeah. I have 1, 2, 3, all the separate tiers, and then I have 4 to 6, I think, and then 7 to 11. And realistically, even that 4 to 6 range, you could probably squeeze any of the guys in the.
So our 11th pick was Gunler. He's inside everyone's top 11 because he wasn't in mine. Yeah. All right.
Oh yeah.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I think that the entire top 11 we had is the exact same top 11 I have on my board. So the order wasn't exactly the same, but no surprises really there. The top 6 guys were pretty much the same top 6 guys I have, and then the 7 to 11 group, I think you can just choose whoever you like from that group, and no problems with that choice.
Well, that's amazing because I have 3 first-round picks in one of my fantasy leagues, and one of them is going to be a lottery pick, so I'm inside the top 10 there for sure. But the other 2 are going to be just outside 11, I think. So that's pretty freaking spectacular for me.
Yeah, and I think you can see from the results we have here that the first 12 guys were as expected, and then it just goes off the board. Everyone has very different lists after that. So I think that's how this draft is gonna unfold. That the first 11 or 12 names are gonna be pretty much what we expect, and then it's anyone's guess at that point.
All right, so you're adding Dylan Holloway in there because we had him at 12. I think that's probably pretty safe too. So then after that, I agree with you. It kind of goes a matter of personal preference, perhaps, or organizational depth preference. We went Quinn, Zary, Mysak, Mercer, and Cormier with the next batch of players. I picked Quinn at 13th. I like him. You heard my comments after I picked him. Connor Zary, first overall pick from the WHL draft. Jan Mysak's just come over to play in the OHL. Mercer made Team Canada. So a lot of really good players in there. No outrageous selections there?
No, I don't think there's any outrageous selections. The one guy that was a little bit off the board was the Nashville pick of Quinn. For me, he's a guy I have just outside of the first round, but honestly, with this draft, the group, like Jokke said, after the 12th pick, honestly, you could probably take anyone from 13 to 45, and you could realistically toss them in a blender, and I wouldn't be shocked to see any of those guys picked.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't think Quinn's going to be in the NHL next year. I think he's a couple of years away, but I'm picking him there based on what I see as the potential, and I see a lot of potential with him. So that's why I maybe moved him up a little bit higher. All right. Rodion Amirov went 19th to the Edmonton Oilers. I had him a little higher earlier in the year. He's fallen down a little bit. I did get to see him live at the Canada-Russia series, and he didn't really stand out to me too much, and I was looking for him. And then he didn't make Russia for the World Juniors, so my limited amount of viewings for him were underwhelming. So that's why he's fallen down my draft board. I don't think I would have picked him this high. So you guys have obviously seen him a little bit more than me. Sell me on Rodion Amirov at 19.
That's all you, Josh.
So I mean, so so for me, I mean, I just really like his two-way game. I mean, as as I said earlier, I mean, he's, I mean, he is a pest when it comes to his neutral zone play. If you are trying to rush the puck up the ice, I mean, he definitely becomes a very big wall in the neutral zone. I mean, he is just a very, very good defensive forward. I definitely have him a little bit higher in my rankings. I mean, in my personal rankings, I have him at 14. I just really love the two-way play that he has, and I can certainly see him going a little bit higher.
Fair enough.
And I also have him in that top 20 range. I was just watching him a couple of days ago in the Russian Junior League, and he can be a bit disappointing at times. He's not that flashy, but he's really effective, and his all-around game is really strong. And in the KHL games I've watched him, he's shown that he has really good both hands and feet that are pretty much standout qualities, even at the KHL level. So I can definitely see top 20 potential in him.
Okay, Tony, who is the player that was on your draft list that is highest ranked that wasn't picked?
There's a small group of 3 guys I have in Hervinen, Simontaival, and Stranges, who I had at 18, 19, 20. That Stranges was the one guy I figured he might not get picked because he's very, very boomer bust. But I was a little shocked with Hervinen and Simontaival not getting picked at all in the first round.
Fair enough. How about you, Yogi?
I'm not shocked that they weren't picked. Hirvonen is somewhere around 40 for me, so wouldn't be on my first round. Simontaival, he may be the most controversial prospect in this draft, so he can go in the top 20 or he can go in the 3rd round. So I like him a lot. I have him as a late first round, but we'll see. Depends on how you like him, I guess. But other names that I had in that range are Helge Grans and Topi Niemelä. So right-handed shot defensemen are always super valuable for the NHL teams. So I think those are 2 guys that could definitely squeeze into the first round. But at the same time, I'm not shocked that they didn't make it.
I had a couple names, a couple forwards, a couple D, Braden Schneider, Caden Gooley, Jacob Perreault, Michael Benning, Carter Savoy, Luke Evangelista, Lucas Reichel. Those are all a couple players that, anywhere from 20 to 50, I think they could all be interchanged. I was glad to see Will Cooley made it. Josh, do you have a player or 2 that stood out as to you can't believe you didn't make it?
Yeah, so for me, I would definitely say Topi Niemelä. As Yoki mentioned, right-handed defensemen are very valuable. Like in the physical, approach that he takes, definitely, definitely seems like, he could garner a lot of attention from teams. And then Justin is sort of too. So, sort of for me is from a offensive production consistency point of view, he's a little bit more inconsistent, but in terms of in terms of like his senses, and how he reads the game, in terms of my opinion, I did definitely see him as one of the smartest players in this prospect board. He just reads the game very, very well.
Yeah, right on. Well, one thing I can guarantee. Any final thoughts on this before I wrap this up?
No. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked to see the draft go down this way or a number of ways because the draft is a little stupid sometimes. Honestly, it's just you're gonna have a guy that goes that none of us have really ranked in the first round, and he's gonna end up being a star. You're gonna have a team like Ottawa jump up and grab Askarov with the 7th pick. Like, the draft is weird, so I'm not going to be shocked if any of this goes exactly the way we put it.
Well, I would be. In fact, I would eat my shorts if the draft went down in this order and the way we picked it. I can pretty much guarantee you that it's probably going to look a lot different than this, but that's okay. It's a mock draft. They're there to be mocked.
But yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think the Askarov pick is gonna be. I think he's gonna go in that range. So that wouldn't be a stupid pick. I think if he goes 7th overall. So if he goes in the top 4, top 3, then that might be a stupid pick, I guess. But yeah, goalies like him don't come around very often. So if you want the franchise goalie, you may just have to burn a top 10 pick on him.
Right, and I don't really care for the argument that, well, goalies are voodoo and they don't always work out. Well, no player is a guarantee. You know, the first overall pick isn't a slam dunk. That doesn't always work out. Just ask the Edmonton Oilers. So I think, screw it, take him. Top 10, absolutely. No problem with that pick whatsoever.
And the other thing with Askarov is a lot of people keep harping on goalies take 3 to 5 years. Goalies, they're not going to be in the NHL 3 to 5 years. Well, that trend's been changing in the NHL lately. Like, you have guys like Carter Hart coming into the league at 20, 21, and they're making a difference. And I wouldn't be shocked if Askarov was one of those guys that break in at 21 and he's changing a team's fortunes in that early in his career.
Yeah, Samsonov and Shesterkin, the way they have managed the transition from the KHL to the NHL very quickly. I think people are taking notice of that. Hey, maybe Askarov can play in the KHL next season and then maybe even jump to the NHL immediately after that. Who knows? But yeah, I do agree that goalies don't take 5 to 7 years anymore like they used to.
Right. Yeah. 2 to 3 years is right on par with prospects. I remember having this conversation at the draft with, I think it was Craig Button, about the Canucks first round pick, the Russian. Podkolzin, thanks. And then he had a contract for 2 years in the KHL. I'm like, well, what difference does that make? He's going to be 2 years before he's ready to play in the NHL anyway. So if he's playing in Russia or CHL or AHL, it's wherever it's not the NHL. So it doesn't really matter if that's your criteria for not picking him because he has a KHL contract that's locked in for 2 years. I suppose that may be a factor for Askarov too, the whole Russian factor for some teams. I think that's still a real thing. And while a 2-year KHL contract isn't that big of a deal for an 18-year-old prospect, I don't know if there's a term limit on KHL contracts, but if he signed like a 4-year contract, then that might be a bit of a break tapper for some teams if he has that kind of contract going into the draft.
Yeah, but they do have entry-level contracts the same way the NHL does, so the term is limited.
Well, there you go.
For the young guys. So, yeah, and also I think pretty much all the top Russians cross the pond pretty quickly. So it's usually the 2nd, 3rd round picks that might take a few years before they do that.
Right on. All right, so you've been listening to episode 81, the mock draft episode of the DobberProspects podcast. I'm your host, Peter Harling. You follow me on Twitter at Farling, PHARLING, and the podcast at DPR_show. And joining me on this episode has been DobberProspects draft experts, Jokke Nevalainen, our director of European scouting. Follow him on Twitter at Jokke Nevalainen, JOKKENEVALAINEN. Our Buffalo Sabres prospect writer, Josh Tessler, at Josh Tessler, JOSH, capital TESSLER_. And our Ottawa Senators expert, Tony Ferrari, at the Tony Ferrari, just like the car. So thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead, hit subscribe, like the show, give us a review, preferably 5 stars, give us a share, and let all your friends know about it. And I hope you enjoyed listening. We'll see you on the next episode.